This story still echoes in my head, like all the sounds I heard that night. I had a long-haul job to do, driving west through an old road that was rarely used, mostly by those trying to avoid the crowded highways. I was already far from the city when night fell, and that's when things started going downhill. You know that feeling when your vehicle starts to stutter, and then the engine slowly dies, leaving you in complete darkness? My truck stalled right in the middle of nowhere, under a faint moonlight that only made the isolation feel more oppressive. I tried to start the engine again, but it made a noise that sounded like a low groan. I glanced at my fuel gauge, plenty of gas left. This wasn't a fuel issue. The dashboard lights flickered once, twice, and then went dark. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped out, the cold air biting at my skin. The silence was unnerving, like the whole world had paused. I opened the hood, but I'm no mechanic. Everything looked fine, just dead. That's when I heard it, a soft rustling sound coming from the woods beside the road. I froze, flashlight trembling in my hand. I thought it might be an animal, a deer maybe. But then the sound came again, closer this time, like something or someone was deliberately stepping on fallen leaves. My heart started to pound in my chest. I felt a chill run down my spine as I realized I wasn't alone out there. I scanned the tree line with a flashlight, but all I could see were shadows. The rustling stopped, and then there was a whisper, a soft, almost playful murmur, carried on the wind. I called out, "Hello? Anyone there?" My voice sounded weak, shaky. No answer. I decided to get back in the truck. I locked the doors, trying to convince myself it was just my imagination. But then, there was a thud on the side of the truck, like a hand slapping against metal. I jumped, my heart pounding in my ears. I turned the key in the ignition out of desperation. The truck sputtered, but didn't start. I could hear my own breathing fast and shallow, as I sat there gripping the steering wheel, eyes darting around the cab. Then I heard it, a faint knock on the passenger side window. My blood ran cold. I turned my head slowly, terrified of what I might see. There, pressed against the glass, was a face. Pale, with eyes that seemed too large for its skull, staring right at me. Its mouth was slightly open, and I swear I could hear it breathing, even through the glass. I couldn't move, couldn't scream. The face began to smile, a slow, creeping smile that stretched wider than any human mouth should. The figure raised a hand and tapped the window again, as if asking to be let in. My mind screamed at me to start the engine, to drive, to do anything. I slammed my fist against the dashboard, and miraculously, the truck roared to life. I didn't look back. I floored the gas, the truck jolting forward, tires screeching on the asphalt. I sped down the dark road, eyes fixed on the path ahead. I glanced in the rearview mirror once, and saw nothing. Just the dark stretch of road behind me. But I knew better than to stop. I drove all night, and even when I reached the next town, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. To this day, I don't take that road anymore. And if my truck ever stalls again in the middle of nowhere, I'm not getting out. I'll sit there with the doors locked and pray for daylight. Because whatever was out there that night, it wasn't human. And I never want to see that smile again. I didn't sleep for days after that. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that face, those wide, unnatural eyes staring back at me, the smile that seemed to stretch too far across its cheeks. It wasn't just fear, it was the kind of terror that sinks into your bones, the kind you feel deep in your gut when you know something is terribly wrong. I tried to tell myself it was a trick of the light, or maybe I was just exhausted. But no matter how many excuses I made, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed me. Every night, I felt it, the weight of unseen eyes watching me from the darkness, even in my own home. A week later, I took another job. I needed to get back on the road, to convince myself that it had all been in my head. This time, I chose a route that stuck to the highways, no shortcuts through the woods. I started to feel more like myself after a few hours. The steady hum of the engine, the radio crackling with static, the familiar lines of the road stretching out before me, everything felt normal again. It was just past midnight when I reached a rest stop. I was running low on coffee, and my eyes were beginning to droop. I pulled in, parked under one of the flickering streetlights, and went inside. The place was almost deserted, save for a bored-looking cashier behind the counter and a single old man nursing a cup of coffee in the corner. I grabbed a fresh cup, paid, and headed back to my truck. I kept telling myself I was fine, but the moment I stepped outside, I felt it again, that same heavy, suffocating sensation, like something was pressing down on my chest. I stopped in my tracks, coffee spilling over my hand, and looked around. There, across the parking lot, just beyond the glow of the streetlight, I saw a figure. It was standing in the shadows, still as a statue. I couldn't make out the face, but I knew. I just knew it was looking at me. I wanted to run, to get back into the truck, but I couldn't move. I was frozen. Then, slowly, it began to move. Not walking, but gliding toward me, its feet never seeming to touch the ground. The shadows clung to it, like it was pulling the darkness along with it. My breath caught in my throat. I forced myself to turn away and sprinted to my truck, fumbling with the keys, my hands shaking. I got in, slammed the door, and locked it. My heart was hammering in my chest, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. I glanced up and saw it, closer now, just outside the circle of light from the lamp. I could see the outline of its face again, and that same impossibly wide smile. I threw the truck into gear and peeled out of the rest stop, tires screeching on the asphalt. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I could feel it behind me, could feel its gaze on the back of my neck. I drove until dawn, until the sun finally crept over the horizon, flooding the world with light. Only then did I dare to breathe again. I pulled over at the next town, my hands still trembling as I shut off the engine. I knew I couldn't keep doing this. I needed to find out what was happening, who or what was stalking me. So I did what any desperate man would do. I went looking for answers. I spent the next few days asking around, trying to find anyone who might have heard of strange things happening on that old road. Most people just gave me strange looks or laughed it off, but then, at a small diner off a back road, I found someone who knew what I was talking about. The waitress, an older woman with a knowing look in her eyes, leaned in close when I mentioned the face I'd seen. She asked me to describe it, and when I did, her face went pale. She told me she'd heard stories. Stories about a man who used to live in a cabin deep in those woods. A man who'd lost everything, his family, his home, and had gone mad. They say he wandered the roads at night, looking for lost souls to keep him company. She told me no one had seen him in years, but there were still whispers, rumors of truckers who'd seen him, who'd stopped on that road and never been heard from again. I felt a chill run down my spine. I wanted to believe it was just a ghost story, something the locals told to spook outsiders. But deep down, I knew it was more than that. I had seen it. I had felt its gaze. And I knew, it wasn't done with me yet. So here I am, still driving, still looking over my shoulder every chance I get. I've taken every precaution, avoiding the old roads, keeping to well-lit highways. But I know it's out there, somewhere in the dark, waiting for me to make a mistake. And every night, when the sun dips below the horizon, I can feel it, closer than before, just out of sight. Waiting. I thought I could outrun it, outdrive it. But the more miles I put between myself and that cursed road, the more I realized there was no distance far enough. The feeling of being watched, the sense of something lurking just beyond the edges of my vision, it never left me. I couldn't shake the cold sweat that ran down my back or the hair standing up on my neck whenever I passed a stretch of road with no lights. A few nights after my encounter at the rest stop, I was driving through another lonely highway. The road was empty, and the moon was full, casting an eerie glow over the landscape. I tried to focus on the road ahead, keeping my mind occupied with the steady rhythm of the tires on the asphalt. Then, out of nowhere, the headlights flickered. It was just for a second, a brief blink, but my stomach dropped. I tightened my grip on the wheel, trying to convince myself it was just a glitch, a momentary hiccup in the electrical system. But then, it happened again. And again. The engine started to sputter, the way it had that first night, and I felt the familiar rise of panic in my chest. I pressed down on the gas, praying it would keep going, but the truck began to slow, the engine coughing and choking like it was being strangled. I pulled over to the side of the road, heart pounding in my ears. This couldn't be happening again. I stared out into the dark, my breath fogging up the windshield. Everything was silent. Too silent. Not even the sound of crickets or the rustling of leaves in the wind. Then I saw it, movement in the trees along the roadside. Just a flicker at first, like a shadow darting between the trunks. My eyes strained to see, searching for something, anything, to make sense of what I was seeing. And then I heard it, a low, whispering voice, just barely audible over the sound of my own breath. It wasn't words, not exactly, just a soft murmuring that seemed to come from all directions at once, like the trees themselves were whispering. I grabbed my flashlight, even though I knew it was a mistake. I knew I should just stay in the truck, lock the doors, and wait for morning. But something, curiosity, fear, maybe something else entirely, compelled me to open the door and step outside. The air was cold, biting at my skin as I moved toward the edge of the road, the flashlight beam slicing through the dark. The whispering grew louder, more insistent. I could feel it vibrating in my skull, like a swarm of insects buzzing just beneath my skin. I shined the light into the trees, and there it was again, the face staring back at me from the darkness. Its eyes were wide and hungry, and that horrible smile was stretched even wider now, as if it was delighted that I'd come looking for it. It didn't move, but I could feel it pulling at me, drawing me closer. My feet moved on their own, stepping off the road, crunching on the leaves and twigs beneath me. I tried to stop, tried to turn around, but my body wouldn't obey. It was like I was being led, like something had hooked into my mind and was dragging me forward. I was only a few feet away when I heard a voice, clear this time, distinct. It wasn't a whisper anymore. It was a low, raspy voice, speaking directly to me. You shouldn't have stopped, it said, the words cutting through the air like a knife. You shouldn't have come back. I felt a cold sweat break out on my forehead. The face in the dark didn't belong to anything human, I realized. It was like a mask, a parody of a human face, stretched and distorted. The eyes were too big, the smile too wide, like it was trying to mimic something it didn't quite understand. Then the whispering grew louder, filling my head with a deafening roar. My flashlight flickered and died, plunging me into darkness. I felt a hand, cold and clammy, wrap around my wrist, pulling me deeper into the trees. I yanked back with all my strength, finally breaking free. I turned and ran, stumbling back toward the truck, not daring to look back. I could hear footsteps behind me, heavy and fast, matching my pace. I reached the truck, slammed the door shut, and locked it, panting, my heart racing. For a moment, everything was still. Then, slowly, I turned to look out the window. The face was pressed against the glass again, that same twisted grin spread across its features. But this time, its mouth was moving, whispering something I couldn't hear. I threw the truck into drive and slammed on the gas. The engine roared back to life, and I sped down the road, not daring to look in the rearview mirror. I kept driving until the sun came up, not stopping for anything, not even the gnawing fear in my gut that told me it was still back there, somewhere waiting. I knew then that I was never going to escape it. Whatever it was, it had marked me. I was its, and it was mine. And no matter how far I drove, no matter where I went, it would always be there, waiting in the dark, smiling that impossible smile. I've been on the road ever since, driving from town to town, never staying anywhere too long, never stopping at night. I've seen other things I can't explain, but nothing as terrifying as what I saw that night. I've started to think that maybe it isn't just a ghost or a monster, but something else, something older, something that was never meant to be seen by human eyes. And if you're out there, driving alone in the dark, and you feel like something is watching you, whatever you do, don't stop. Don't look. Just keep driving, and pray that it never finds you. Because once it does, it never lets go. A month has passed since that last encounter on the highway. I hadn't stopped driving since. My sleep was down to an hour or two at a time, snatching moments in crowded truck stops where I felt less alone, less vulnerable. But no matter how exhausted I became, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was creeping closer. The whispering had started to bleed into my waking moments. Soft, nearly inaudible murmurs just beneath the noise of the road, the static on the radio, the rush of wind through the cracked windows. I had one rule now: never stop after dark. But then, one night, fate decided to test me again. I was driving through a desolate stretch of road, surrounded by endless cornfields that seemed to sway and whisper in the moonlight. The gas gauge was dropping faster than it should have, dipping toward empty even though I'd filled up just an hour before. The truck started to sputter, the engine coughing like it was choking on air. My breath hitched in my throat. No, 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 I muttered, pressing harder on the gas. But it didn't help. The truck slowed to a crawl, then finally shuddered to a stop right in the middle of the road. I cursed under my breath, glancing around at the dark, endless fields on either side of me. There wasn't another car for miles. The road stretched out, lonely and empty, under the pale, indifferent moon. I sat there, gripping the wheel, my heart pounding in my chest. I could feel it again, that thick, suffocating presence, like the air itself was pressing down on me, squeezing the breath from my lungs. I knew it was out there, somewhere in the darkness, waiting. I took a deep breath and reached for the ignition. My hand was trembling. I turned the key. The engine sputtered and died. I tried again. Nothing. A cold sweat trickled down my back. Then, I saw movement in the rearview mirror. At first, it was just a shadow, something shifting in the distance. My hands tightened on the steering wheel as I stared into the darkness behind me. The shadow began to take shape, a figure, walking slowly down the road, coming closer with each step. My heart was racing now. I fumbled for my phone, desperate to call for help, but there was no signal. The figure was closer now, and I could see it more clearly. It was tall and thin, its movements jerky and unnatural, like it was struggling to stay upright. And then I saw its face. That same face I had seen before. Pale, eyes too wide, and that horrible twisted grin that seemed to stretch impossibly across its features. It was getting closer, step by step, its smile growing wider as it approached. I knew I had to get out of there. I tried the ignition again, but the engine wouldn't start. The truck was dead. I glanced back at the figure, Now only a few yards away, its eyes locked onto mine. It raised a hand slowly and tapped on the glass.
Tip, tip, tip.
The sound sent a shockwave of terror through my body. I was out of options. I had to run. I grabbed my flashlight and flung the door open, bursting out of the truck. I sprinted toward the cornfield, the tall stalk swallowing me whole as I ran deeper and deeper into the darkness. The whispers were back, louder than ever, coming from every direction. I could hear it behind me, its footsteps crunching through the dry corn husks, moving faster now, almost running. I pushed myself harder, my legs burning, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I had no idea where I was going. I just knew I had to get away.
Then I tripped.
My foot caught on something, and I went down hard, the flashlight flying from my hand and landing a few feet away, its beam flickering weakly. I scrambled to my feet, my hands bloody from the rough ground. I reached for the flashlight and froze. It was standing right in front of me, just beyond the beam of the light, its smile wider than ever. I could see its teeth now, sharp and jagged, glinting in the pale moonlight. "Why do you run?" it whispered, its voice a hiss that cut through the night. "I only want to see you smile." I backed away, but my legs were weak. I stumbled and fell again, my back hitting the ground hard. The flashlight rolled away, and for a moment, I was plunged into complete darkness. I could hear it moving closer, the rustle of corn stalks parting, the sound of its breath, slow and steady. I grabbed the flashlight, fumbling to turn it back on. The light flickered to life, and I shined it directly at the figure. It stopped, its smile faltering, its eyes narrowing in the bright beam. Then I did the only thing I could think of. I grabbed a rock from the ground and hurled it at the figure. It struck the face, and for a moment, the smile twisted into a snarl. The figure let out a horrible guttural scream, a sound that echoed through the fields, piercing the night like a knife. I didn't wait to see what would happen next. I turned and ran, crashing through the corn, my legs moving faster than they ever had before. I didn't stop until I saw the lights of a farmhouse in the distance. I stumbled toward it, desperate, half blind with fear. I banged on the door, screaming for help, and finally, an old farmer opened it, a shotgun in his hands. I collapsed onto the porch, gasping for breath, trying to explain what I'd seen. The farmer listened, his face grim. He didn't ask questions, just nodded and helped me inside. "You're lucky," he said finally, his voice low. "Most folks who see it, they don't make it this far." He let me stay there that night. I didn't sleep. I sat by the window, staring out at the fields, waiting for dawn. I could still hear the whispering, faint and distant, carried on the wind. When morning came, I thanked the farmer and left, but I knew I wasn't safe. I knew it would be back. I knew it was still out there, waiting, watching. And now, every time I close my eyes, I see that smile. I hear the whisper. And I know one day, no matter how far I run, it will find me again. So if you're ever out there, alone on a dark road, and you see something in the distance, don't stop. Don't look. Just keep going. Because once it's seen you, it never stops smiling. And it never, ever lets you go.